I woke up in a grand bedroom, silk curtains swaying as the morning sun peeked through. My head pounded with memories, not mine, but hers. Or rather, mine now. I had been reborn as Evelyn Rivenhart, the younger sister of the novel's greatest villain, Damien Rivenhart. In the story, Damien slaughtered thousands, betrayed the kingdom, and died in agony. His cruelty knew no bounds. But I also remembered something the book never mentioned, how he used to tuck his little sister into bed, bring her sweets, and protect her from their abusive father. He wasn't born evil. He was broken. I clenched my fists. This time, I won't let him fall. Eve, you're awake. His voice was deep, cautious. Damien stood at my bedside, his cold eyes unreadable. The same eyes that would one day be filled with hatred. I smiled, reaching for his hand. Brother, I had a terrible dream. You were hurt, alone. For a second, his expression softened. TCH nonsense? He pulled away, but his grip lingered. No one can hurt me. Liar. I saw the bruises he hid under his sleeves, the burden he carried alone. Our father's cruelty, the nobility's schemes, he had no one to rely on. That's why he became a villain. Not this time. When father ordered Damien to commit his first crime, I stepped in. I'll do it, I said. Damien turned to me in shock. Eve, don't be foolish.
No.
I won't let you stain your hands. I met his gaze, unwavering. I'll find another way. That was the beginning. I schemed in the shadows, outwitted enemies before they could harm us, and guided Damien toward a different path. Instead of vengeance, I gave him reasons to fight for justice. I made allies, whispered the right words, and changed fate, one decision at a time. The day he was supposed to betray the kingdom, he stood at the crossroads of destiny. His sword trembled in his hand.
Eve, his voice wavered.
If I take this path, will I still be strong? I smiled, placing a hand over his. Stronger than ever, brother. And for the first time in the story, Damien Rivenhart did not become a villain. He became a hero. The grand hall was eerily silent. Damien stood at the center, sword in hand, his long black coat billowing slightly from the breeze seeping through the open window. This was the moment he was supposed to betray the kingdom, strike down the noble council, and set the empire ablaze. But he hesitated. I stepped forward. Brother, put down your sword. His grip tightened.
Eve.
I can't. You can, I whispered, holding out my hand. You're not alone anymore. Damien's sharp golden eyes met mine, a storm raging within them. He had always been a man of conviction, but right now, he was lost, standing between two roads, one of vengeance and one of redemption. A slow clap echoed through the hall. A man emerged from the shadows, Duke Reinhardt, my father's most trusted advisor. His crimson cloak swayed as he smirked. How touching, Reinhardt sneered. The feared demon Duke hesitates because of his little sister. Damien turned his sword toward the man.
You?
Reinhardt chuckled. I knew you were intelligent, but I never thought you'd actually stop. That's disappointing. His eyes flicked to me. And all because of hers? I stepped forward, my heart pounding. I know everything, Reinhardt. You manipulated father. You whispered poison into my brother's ears, pushed him toward this fate. You're the real mastermind behind this war. His smirk widened. Clever girl. But do you think a few sweet words will stop what's already begun? He snapped his fingers. At that moment, the walls trembled, and armored knights burst through the doors. Damien reacted instantly, his sword slicing through the air as he blocked the first strike aimed at me. Eve, get back. No, I said firmly. I won't leave you. I had spent too long planning for this moment. I couldn't let my brother face this alone. Reinhardt sighed, drawing his own sword. Then died together. Our battle began. Damien was a force of nature. Each swing of his blade sent enemies sprawling, his golden eyes blazing with fury. But I had prepared for this. I pulled a hidden dagger from my sleeve and dodged a knight's attack, aiming for the weak points in their armor. My months of secret training were finally paying off. Reinhardt clashed blades with Damien, grinning. You were supposed to be my greatest weapon, but now you're just a sentimental fool. Damien growled.
You used me.
Used my pain for your gain. Reinhardt pushed forward. And what will you do about it? I saw the brief hesitation in my brother's stance. Even now, even after everything, Damien still feared becoming the monster everyone believed him to be.
So, I did what I had to.
I lunged forward, slashing my dagger across Reinhardt's arm. He hissed in pain, retreating slightly. Damien looked at me in shock.
Eve.
I met his gaze. You don't have to do this alone. Something shifted in his expression. Determination hardened his features. Damien exhaled slowly. Then, he gripped his sword tighter and surged forward, his blade cutting through the enemy forces like lightning. Reinhardt barely had time to react before Damien's sword pressed against his throat. Damien's voice was low, dangerous. This is over. Reinhardt laughed weakly. You really are different now. Damien didn't hesitate. He struck the final blow, ending the man who had tried to control his fate. As the battlefield fell silent, I looked at my brother. His shoulders were tense, his hands shaking slightly. I placed my hand over his. You did the right thing. He let out a breath and, for the first time, smiled. A real, unguarded smile. Maybe I did. That day, Damien Rivenhart did not become a villain. He became the man he was meant to be. And I, his sister, would make sure he never walked that dark path again. The grand hall fell into eerie silence, the scent of blood still lingering in the air. Damien stood victorious, his sword dripping crimson as Reinhardt's lifeless body slumped to the marble floor. I exhaled a shaky breath. It was over. Or so I thought. A slow clap echoed through the chamber. A familiar voice, one that sent a chill down my spine, spoke from the shadows. Well done, brother. My blood ran cold. From behind the throne, a figure stepped forward. Our father. Duke Alistair Rivenhart. Damien's body went rigid, his golden eyes narrowing in suspicion. Father. Duke Alistair looked amused, his silver hair untouched by the years, his piercing gaze studying us like insects. I must say, I never expected you to hesitate, he mused, glancing at Reinhardt's corpse. But perhaps that was my mistake. I underestimated the influence of a foolish little girl. His cold eyes flickered to me. I gritted my teeth. You knew? He chuckled. Oh, Evelyn, did you really think I was blind? I watched you. I saw the way you whispered in your brother's ear, how you twisted him away from the future I prepared for him. He sighed, shaking his head. And here I thought you'd be a loyal daughter. Damien stepped in front of me protectively. So this was your plan all along? Manipulating me, using Reinhardt as a pawn. Waiting for me to take control, so you could step in at the last moment. Father smirked. You were meant to be my sword, Damien. My perfect weapon. His gaze darkened. But a sword that refuses to be wielded is useless. A sudden shift in the air made my stomach drop. I turned just in time to see our own soldiers, Rivenhart Knights, emerging from the corridors, their blades drawn. My breath caught in my throat. Damien clenched his fists. You're turning our own knights against us? Father's smile was razor-sharp. Correction. My knights. He flicked his wrist, and the soldiers stepped closer. I gave them an order. If you ever turned against me, they were to execute you without hesitation. I glanced at Damien, dread filling my chest. He can't fight them all, he wouldn't kill them. Not our family's knights. They were people he had trained with, fought beside. But they wouldn't hesitate. Father's voice was smooth, coaxing. You have two choices, Damien. He raised one finger. Kill your sister and prove your loyalty to me. Then he raised a second. Or die. I felt Damien's entire body tense. A choice. A twisted, cruel choice. I grabbed Damien's hand. You know what to do. He looked at me, agony flickering in his golden eyes. His hesitation lasted only a moment. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he dropped his sword. The clang of steel against the marble floor was deafening. Father's expression darkened. So you choose death. Damien exhaled. No. His voice was quiet but firm. He took a step forward, shielding me. I choose freedom. And then, asterisk, asterisk, chaos, asterisk, asterisk. Hashtag, 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 the final stand. Before the knights could react, I pulled a small vial from my sleeve and smashed it against the floor, but thick, black fog exploded around us.
Eve.
I grabbed Damien's wrist. Move. We darted through the confusion, weaving between the coughing knights. But Father's voice cut through the chaos. We barely made it past the throne room before arrows rained down, forcing us to take cover behind the columns. We can't fight them all, I whispered, gripping my dagger. The air crackled with tension. Lucian stood before us, no longer the brother-in-arms Damien once trusted, but a cold-hearted usurper who had manipulated everything from the shadows. Damien's hands trembled around his sword's hilt, not with fear, but with fury. You used me, he said, voice low and sharp. All this time, you were never my friend. Lucian chuckled, stepping forward with an air of arrogance. Oh, Damien, you were the easiest pawn to control. Fueled by anger, desperate for power. How could I not take advantage of that? Damien's grip tightened. I could see it, the storm in his eyes, the lingering hesitation. This was his best friend. Could he really strike him down? Lucian noticed. His smirk widened. You can't do it, can you? He turned to me. But Evelyn can. I stiffened. Lucian had always known I was Damien's anchor, the one who stopped him from falling into darkness. If he could remove me, Damien would be lost again. I should have killed you first, Lucian mused, drawing his blade. Then my plan wouldn't have fallen apart. I smirked. And yet, here I am. Lucian lunged at me. Damien moved instantly, his blade intercepting Lucian's strike with a loud clang. You won't touch her, he growled. Lucian smirked. There's the Damien I wanted. The one willing to kill for something? Sparks flew as their swords clashed. Damien fought with raw power, his attacks heavy and relentless. Lucian was fast, calculating, dodging, and countering with precision. I watched carefully, searching for an opening. Lucian had been manipulating us for years. He knew how Damien fought. But he had always underestimated me. I slipped into the shadows. Lucian parried another strike and whispered, You can never win, Damien. You're still that lost boy, desperate for approval. Damien snarled, No, I'm not. Lucian laughed, dodging another swing. Then prove it. Kill me. Damien hesitated. And that was the moment I struck. From the darkness, I emerged behind Lucian, my dagger slicing through the air. Lucian's eyes widened in shock as my blade plunged into his side. He staggered, gasping. You? I should have killed you first. Damien's blade pressed against his throat. You betrayed me. You betrayed her. His voice was ice-cold. I should end you here. Lucian coughed, blood dripping from his lips. Then do it. Damien hesitated. This was it, the moment that would decide if he would truly escape his fate as a villain. I stepped beside him, placing a hand on his arm. Damien. Killing him won't change what he did. It won't make you stronger. Let him rot in the darkness he created. Damien's golden eyes met mine. And then he lowered his sword. He turned to the guards who had arrived, their weapons raised. Take him. Lucian laughed weakly as he was dragged away. You're a fool, Damien. You could have been great. Damien exhaled slowly, his shoulders dropping. No. I just became the man I was meant to be. The battle was over. The throne was safe. Damien stood at my side, no longer a villain, but a hero in his own right. He turned to me with a small, tired smile. Thank you, Eve. I smiled back. Always, brother. And for the first time, I knew we had truly rewritten fate. Months had passed since Lucian's betrayal and defeat. Damien was no longer the feared demon duke or the pawn of corrupt nobles. He was now Lord Damien Rivenheart, ruler of the kingdom's strongest territory, a man respected for his wisdom, not feared for his wrath. And I, Evelyn Rivenheart, remained by his side. But peace was never eternal. I stood on the castle balcony, watching as the city bustled below. Merchants bartered in the streets, children ran through the marketplace, and for the first time in years, the people laughed. Damien approached, his long coat swaying in the wind. It's strange, isn't it? I glanced at him. What is? His golden eyes softened. To finally have peace. I smiled. You earned it. He leaned against the railing. And yet, something tells me it won't last. I sighed. You always were the paranoid one. He smirked. You taught me well. Hashtag, 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 a warning from the shadows. Just then, a shadow moved in the courtyard below. A hooded figure slipped through the crowd, their steps deliberate, calculated. They reached into their cloak and tossed a sealed letter onto the balcony. I caught it before it hit the ground. Damien frowned. Who? The figure was already gone. My heart pounded as I broke the wax seal. Inside was a single line written in elegant, blood-red ink. You have only delayed fate. The real game is about to begin. A familiar insignia marked the bottom. My breath caught in my throat. Damien saw my reaction, and his expression darkened.
Eve.
I turned to him, gripping the letter tightly. We're not done yet. Far beyond the horizon, in the depths of the Empire, someone was still watching. And this time they were coming for us. To be continued? Thanks for watching. For more stories, please subscribe Eververse Novel.